I'm a veterinarian, and I'm celebrating 25 years in practice this year. And this year I'm celebrating, there are some years where I was not particularly feeling celebratory. So I think that the statement that this is a journey and some years we're feeling better about things than others is totally true. About 7 years ago, 5 years ago, I started on my coach training journey. So I am a certified coach and have done some work in the specialties of compassion fatigue and physician coaching in healthcare. So I'm wrapping all of that together, really looking to support our veterinary colleagues who I think have been for a long time and have been even more overwhelmed and stressed throughout COVID, with the realization that some are really ready for change and hopeful to try and help support that as well. So really happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Super, thanks.
Hi, I'm at like half Leann. This is my like 12 and a half years since vet school graduation. And I cannot say that I've spent all of those years in practice. I maybe halfers if we count part-time and emergency locum stuff. So I graduated vet school, was like that hardcore equine kid, you know, that kid in your class. I was offensively horsey and bailed out of equine practice about a year and a half in after an internship and some time in practice. Went back to school, a bold decision at the time, and ended up doing a PhD in epidemiology. But I looked at vet client relationships in equine practice and then veterinary specialist relationships in equine practice. After that, I researched veterinary mental health. So I spent a lot of time understanding sort of the non-technical aspects of practice and working with students and sort of figuring out and really asking a lot of questions about what is going on in our profession, and through a lot of sort of personal journeying along the side, hopefully have some insight or helpful strategies that I still actively need to remind myself to use every day. Last week I gave a perfectionism webinar to the Canadian Vet Med Association. A friend jokingly was like, "Look at you, like I'm gonna need to come and take notes." And I was like, me too. In the like, I would also like to attend the webinar about how to deal with perfectionism better. So you know, I know I'm a panelist today, but I also, you know, hanging out in the trenches trying to figure out how to, you know, manage mom life. And my last day of practice was Friday. I just transitioned to a non-clinical job, but, you know, trying to navigate all of those things through life, and yes, better understandings of compassion fatigue and burnout, but also the wonderful parts about a profession and how to leverage those to manage through the tough times.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and that idea of we're all kind of practitioners in and trying to continue to work continue to work on ourselves and try to be better every day is kind of it's a good growth mindset piece, isn't it? So the first question that I had for both of you is really around career paths. And you know, I know that you shared a few things about where you're, you know, how you kind of, or where you've been in your careers and all the different pieces. So I wondered if you could share with me some of your journey pieces, like, you know, what prompted you to move to different parts of practice or to different parts of vet med, or serving in different ways. That I think is something that people often don't always know when to pull, you know, when or how to pull the trigger, or when it's the right time. So I'd love to know a little bit more from each of you. Maybe I'll start with Colleen first, because we started with Leann last time.
So I'll perhaps say that I've been a number of different things in the equine profession. I've been an equine, so I was an intern, I was an equine ambulatory practitioner, and equine locum practitioner, which didn't really exist in my area before I started doing it. Been in academia, had a brief stint in lab animal medicine, and what I think will be a tagline and a running joke. It took me 12 years after graduation to become a small animal practitioner, which I just finished like an 8-month stint learning how to do 12 years out of school. And I think at each juncture, a move was the right thing for me. And, you know, when I chose to sort of leave practice the first time, it was a desperation. I am broken. The economy is terrible. I'm still relatively young, and my personal life, I wasn't willing to move to a small place, which is where the equine jobs were at the time. I sort of said, like, I still want to find a partner and have a family, both of which I have now. And I was very concerned that moving to a small town to stay true to my sort of professional aspirations wasn't gonna be compatible with that. So me stuff, I broke my back in a riding accident when I was about 20. So I'd always thought that I was going to need something other than clinical practice. So I went back to school early and started a master's, ended up doing a PhD. You know, it filled a huge bucket of mine, which was teaching. I learned a lot. And when that sort of stopped serving me, it was time to go. And I think that it's really scary because at each of the junctures that I've stopped doing what I was doing before, parts of it were like who I was, how I saw myself, where I wanted to be in the world. And for whatever reason, that dream or that circumstance was not only not serving me, it was causing me harm. And even in that situation, saying no to it became really hard because I didn't have things lined up. And so, you know, it's courageous to stay when that's the option, right? And then figuring out how to create effective change. And I'm confident that Leann has quite a bit of wisdom on the staying and navigating staying. And, you know, I'm not sure I have as much wisdom on navigating staying because I was able to navigate leaving in a way that felt like leaving forward and giving myself more options. But, you know, me in the spring, and I was like, okay, well, you know, COVID, small animal practice, like it's time for me to learn this skill set. And I did. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying for me 12 years. Mel laughs. Mel's a good friend of mine. She knows the terror that consumed me.
Hey, these are real. This is real. Like, I mean, it would be terrifying for me. Yeah. And I will fully own up to the fact that I'm non-clinical too, but I won't, you know, I'm going to, but I can, you know, don't try and underestimate that fear of change is real.
So I also wanted to say, like, starting something new, like, it is terrifying, but it was also an incredibly powerful reminder that I could do it. And really, I never thought I could. I'm kind of afraid of cats. Like, funny, not funny. I'm kind of afraid of cats. And I never did, like, really the last time I spent any time in a small animal practice was high school. I turned 39 this year, high school. And like, cool. But you know what? Friday was my last day and I was a competent small animal practitioner. I wasn't amazing, but I was competent and I had clients that liked me and my colleagues liked me and everyone survived the experience and was sad when I left. So, you know, I do think no matter what barriers are in your way or the fear that comes around or your narratives, like my narrative around going to small, like, man, that had been an opportunity at multiple steps that I've been like, no, I'm going to go to grad school instead. No, I'm going to do this instead. Like, I chose lab animal medicine over small, you know, like I chose a bunch of things and you know what? Rubber met the road and I did it. And geez, I'm proud of myself. Like, and our profession is pretty amazing. And I've learned incredible things doing each of those things that, yes, hopefully move me incrementally closer to where I want to be in the long run. But in school, I frankly, this is the last thing I will say. You've learned that I'm a talker already. I was listening to all the profs who had like winding paths as professionals. And I was like, nope, not me. Like, I'm going to be an equine vet. I'm going to own the practice. I'm going to build it. We're going to have externship students. That's what I'm going to teach. It's going to be awesome. And now, like, not even a long time out of school, 12 years out of school, I have a really winding path. And you know what? Where I am is just right for me. And I have 2 wonderful children and a partner and a house and a dog who's drinking water. And that's a lot of stuff that I also couldn't see coming my way when I was, 24 and in school. So I think it's really important to be gentle with ourselves as we go through the process and as our vision for our future changes. Because certainly 24-year-old me would judge 39-year-old me really harshly. And I'm glad that I can manage that better now.
Thank you so much, Colleen. In the spirit of that, I just love the piece of advice about, I love all of it. And I too have felt a lot of those things, because I think, like Colleen, I had this like real vision of where it was going to be, and it was like a straight arrow. It never happens that way. Life just doesn't. So I wonder if you feel so inclined, feel free to share something that you're proud of that you accomplished this year. Feel free to share it in the chat with us. So I would love to know if there was one, even if there's just one small accomplishment that you're really proud of, even trying, even if you failed. I'd love to know what you're proud of doing this year. Leann, do you want to talk a little bit about your career path and what prompted your changes, and any advice you might have around making transitions?
Absolutely. And I feel like, Colleen, you had a lot more self-awareness than I had along the way, for sure, it sounds like. And that's one thing that I feel like came fairly late for me in my career. Intuitively, I knew this thing existed that I didn't know the name of, was emotional intelligence. So I, somewhere around the age of 6, decided I was going to be a veterinarian, put my head down, became a veterinarian. And when you had in my head that when you're a veterinarian, you go and practice, and then you buy into that practice or start a practice and you practice. And that is essentially kind of sort of what happened. And I started out into mixed practice as one of the first women veterinarian in the county, filling very big shoes of another veterinarian who had passed away. And while it was very humbling and I was very honored to have that role, not everyone embraced that. And while many people did, the ones that didn't certainly are my veterinary brain likes to focus on the negative, so they became the purpose. And somehow, that was, how do I win those people over? And the narrative of I'm not good enough was very loud in my head. And so from mixed animal practice, kind of honed into small animal practice. Again, this kind of understanding that maybe large animal life wasn't all that conducive to being a mom in a family with young children, being on call and all of that kind of stuff. So that was a semi-intentional choice, I feel like, and the rest was just, I felt like stepping stones where I got myself in a situation that didn't serve me and took me a long time to figure that out, and felt more forced to make changes than actually wanted to make them of my own volition. So from small animal practice, started a mobile only practice, one of the first house call practices in Ontario. And that was a very interesting journey, and still holds, I think, one of the fondest places in my heart, from a standpoint of the relationships that were built are a bit different on house call practice or mobile practice. I think if I had to do it over again, I would probably be hospice palliative care house call practice. And from there, the house call practice grew quickly and large, and I built a hospital to support those clients. And I think that in hindsight, I really didn't have a clue what that meant from a leadership standpoint, with it from a team management standpoint, from a team interaction standpoint, and all of those things. And in 2019, there was definitely a realization that did not serve me anymore, and I was not done being a veterinarian practice yet. So I sold that practice. I still work in that practice 2 days a week, and am really working hard in the name of personal and professional growth on working on that professional personal boundaries piece, working on the things that cause us stress, and trying to help support my team from that perspective, and wrapping in the coaching tools and skills and knowledge and all of that I've kind of learned and trying to implement. And for me, it's really as the veterinary coach, which I stepped out into in January 2020, which was very interestingly timed, in a small business, was terrifying to me. As Colleen, you allude to that small, I felt like a very small fish in a very big pond trying to do something very different, and was terrifying and exhilarating, and is one thing that I'm very proud of doing. And that piece of my business is coaching veterinarians for wholeness. And wholeness is really resonated with me from that piece around trying to live a whole life, trying to be that mom and be that wife and be that veterinarian and hold it all together while feeling like I couldn't do any of it good enough. And that's the crux of my journey. And in the last several months, that wholeness piece has even been kind of converted to, or transformed into, understanding the role of trauma in veterinary medicine, and what healing from that trauma looks like, and how embracing all of that that has morphed into what wholeness means to me. So fascinating journey. Intention, I think, is the thing that has made the difference to me in being self-aware enough to make those intentional choices, versus just rolling with the punches, so to speak.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Leann. So the one thing that I heard from both of you is this idea of what we believe to be true, and then maybe testing that out, or trying out to see if, kind of experimenting to see if that's true. And some of the cool things that, if you had left your beliefs the way that they were, perhaps you would not have ever got to the other side, or got to try out some of the neat things that you've got to. So I wonder if, before we kind of talk about, what the concrete steps you might want to take, if you're thinking about, if you're feeling like you're not really satisfied right now, but I would like to just hear a little bit more from you about that idea of limiting beliefs and how to sort that out.
Leann, when you mentioned that mixed animal practice wasn't conducive with sort of family life, I think that's a real challenge right now. In equine practice and in the equine profession, there's quite a discussion about how to make equine practice sustainable, because equine practitioners are generally still doing on-call, generally, very small practices with clients that have been trained for very long periods of time, that, you are their beck and call veterinarian. And I think that at a number of different points in my journey, I had to break down some self-limiting beliefs about, not only about myself, but about the profession, like profession held beliefs. So when I left my full-time equine job in like January of the year after my internship, right? So like really like a year and a half, year and 3/4 into being a vet, I was really broken. But I was sort of like, what am I going to do? I sort of made a plan to go to grad school, but that was still like a January to September away. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll go see if anyone needs me to like run anesthesia for horses, right? Because I can do that, and maybe they need help. And then someone was like, oh, I actually need a part-time equine ambulatory vet. And I was like, oh my God, like this doesn't exist. Okay. So I went and did that for a little bit. And then I was in grad school. My research assistant, actually, I was talking about missing practice. And she said, oh, my mom just hired an equine vet and she's alone and she can't take any time off. And I was like, she needs on-call help, like, and it's only 2 hours away from where I go to school. And so then I did on-call for about a weekend a month for 4 years doing grad school. And again, that's something that didn't exist. And so I think that it's really critical, especially if you have an idea of what you want to do, to just see if there's room, like just have some conversations. Because I think there's a belief that we know our profession well, and goodness knows I was that offensive equine kid who'd done all the externships, knew everybody, knew all the things, right? But as things evolve and as different needs arise, I think that it's really important to say, does it have to be done the way it was done before? It's particularly if the way it was done before doesn't fit me. So I'm really sensitive to students that come to me and say, like, I've been told I can't be an equine vet and a mom. And like, I call BS, like in the card game, like, no, that's not, and it's different than it was 20 years ago when maybe clients really weren't supportive, or, we can't navigate some of that. I would really question and encourage you to question what beliefs are maybe holding you back from doing something you really love, and whether it's cutting back or saying no, or sort of guiding your way to a facet of practice that you really like, thinking you won't be able to ditch the other stuff. But like, it really is worth trying, and there's often not as much on the table in terms of losses as you would think. So I think that's I've had some reckoning with that one.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing, Colleen. Leann, did you have anything to add to that too?
I think thanks for sharing that, Colleen. I agree with all of that, and the word should comes up a lot, right? And I think that that's one of the triggers that I have come to understand, that when I'm telling myself should, or when someone else is telling or overhear it, or it shows up, I'm like, okay, stop for a minute and just think about that. And because I feel like a lot of my early part of my career was based on shoulds, and shoulds I told myself, and shoulds that I was told. And to disrupt that every time I hear it now is kind of my goal. And so I really appreciate that. Things are so much different now than when I headed out into practice. Like, we didn't have Advantage or pain relief for our surgeries. Like, it was like there was I think tolfidine was the newest NSAID available, and now like we treat for babies and have all this other stuff. So we need to disrupt, because the way it was is not the way that it can continue to be. And that's where I feel like we really need to be self-aware around things and not listen to those shoulds.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, when we let go of should, there's a world of opportunities that could be out there, right? That are really, that could be possible. And if I really do believe that, if you can dream it, you can believe it, and you can probably achieve it. So I think, yeah, these are things to really think about when you're looking at what you think that you can and can't do with your career. I could never find, I often hear when people contact the DVM Project, or they post or something, they say, I live in a small town. There's no way I can find a job that would fit me, that's outside of practice. I'm really limited, or my husband travels a lot, or my partner is very busy. I could never find a job that would be flexible. All those things are possible. Sometimes it takes a few skills, and I'm not saying there aren't barriers, because there are, and there are challenges, right? There's none of this is, having the courage to make change. Some of the challenges that are in front of us, I'm not undermining any of that, but it is possible to do lots of things if we examine some of the limiting beliefs that we might have. And I guess I feel actually I probably should have introduced myself a little bit more and shared some of my career as well. I kind of jumped right in because I was excited to ask you all the questions. so I'm a veterinarian also, and I graduated and went into equine practice. I did an internship and then came back to Canada and worked in a equine practice. That's where I thought I was going to be for the rest of my life. And then I changed my mind and I found a wonderful job manning up a program at the University of Guelph, where I had a lot of really wonderful experiences developing and designing a surveillance program. And if you had told me in vet school that I would have been delving into data or dealing with chicken stuff, I would have just laughed at you, because I distinctly remember burning all of my chicken notes and telling myself that the only thing that I needed to know about chicken medicine was that you needed to cook it at 350 degrees. And then surprise, I was on infectious disease calls for bees and fish and chickens. So it really is surprising. And then after that position, and I started the DVM project throughout whilst I was working at the laboratory, first as a blog, and then it morphed into some more services and some conferences, which were also amazing opportunities to work with people across the globe and to really bring people together and collaborate. And then just recently, I've taken an executive director position with a national not-for-profit working on animal health files and animal welfare files. So truly what I guess the big picture thing is that it sounds pretty far from equine medicine, and it sounds like all of this just happened by chance, but truthfully, a lot of it happened because I got real about what really mattered to me and what really made me excited and interested. And the same things, interestingly, that I liked about maybe calculus in high school, in the way that there's lots of, I know, weird, right? That there are lots of ways to get to the right answer, was why I enjoyed lameness practice so much, because there's a million different ways to get to a sound horse and a happy client. Like you can do it 8,000 different ways, and it can be different every time, but you get the same, if you get the same result, it's still the right answer. And the same thing with with the surveillance network that I headed up, that, there was all these different ways to get to a functional surveillance network that was based on collaboration, and based on bringing people together. And that was another piece that I always really enjoyed about practice too, is being able to bring together all these different people around the table, like mom and dad who are paying the bills, and the rider and the trainer and the farrier and all the other thing. And at the center is the animal, right? So for me, it was like that problem solving piece and the collaboration piece. And so I did try out that different job. And then I'm in a new job now where basically we're collaborating. We are creating our whole organization is built around collaboration and building places to solve big problems that are to do with animal health and welfare, which is really cool. And it's really what I enjoy doing really deeply. So it's so fun to be able to include all of those things and still be able to work and help animals as well. So I think but you would never have guessed that if you saw equine vet, surveillance veterinarian, and then you wouldn't really put those pieces together until you explain it in that different and kind of see it from those lenses. And I think that's kind of a neat piece that you can think about when you're trying to make career transitions, because it is really neat to think about, or even what kind of different workplace you might want to find. Because, for example, somebody else could have gone through that exact same career pathway, but chosen it for completely different reasons, and excelled at it for completely different reasons. Like maybe they would have loved the data, or maybe they would have loved the, I don't know, like whatever the bit, they might have found a completely different reason why they loved it. Or maybe they would have just loved like I'm not even sure what else, like, I'm not sure how else you could draw. I'm not sure what other things you could draw in between, but I think there are different ways that you can find satisfaction in different jobs. So all that to say that I think there is a world of opportunity if you're willing to get clear and really self-aware about what you love and what personally you really find drives you forward. If you are feeling like you might be unhappy where you are, or you might not be sure about what your next step might be, or if you're just feeling like you're a bit over it at the moment, then what are steps that you both feel would be useful to take to move yourself forward, or to try to sort out what might be next?
I think that at that point, or if I think about myself and at those points in my career and in my journey so far, it really is about getting very real about what's working, what's not working, and trying to drill down into the why piece and unpacking that a lot. And I feel like a lot of my personal experience anyway has really come down to it when you get right, like kind of dig through all the layers, that there's somehow a core value that is being rubbed against. And for me, really being clear on what my core values are and what my core beliefs are gives me some insight into when that is happening. If there is if there's tension or conflict or something where I'm feeling like, I don't know what's going on, if I can identify that piece, then I have a solution. I'm better to find a solution and what that solution might look like.
I know. I think that's great. Getting clear on your values and getting clear on what really matters to you. That then a good start is that like just getting a piece of paper, the old, not a pros con list, because that's often hard, but what's working well for me right now? What do I love and what do I hate? I think that's such great advice. Colleen, what about you?
I think Leann gave excellent advice. I'm going to give some like pre-taking Leann's advice, which is often when you feel like something isn't working, it's a really panicky place. Like something has happened or something has been happening and you've suddenly realized how messy things are, and it's deeply unsettling. And there's that panic. I'm in the deep end and I'm tired, and I will like take anything near me, like swatting things near me. And so I think one thing that I did well once upon a time was, before I left my job in practice, I went and took a week of vacation, and I took myself skiing. And at that point, it was just me in life. And I took myself up to the nearest ski hill, and I like sat there for 3-4 days and just sort of had some quiet time to think about the things. So and I appreciate that there are a number of reasons that the deep end can be a scary place, like finances, if a partner is moving, like life things that can really make it hard to find some space, or like perspective, like they talk about that like 30,000 foot view, or like just a little. So what I would encourage is try to find a way to find space, to be able to take a deep breath, because when we are panicked and when we're scared, and especially, like student loans are really real, right? Student loans are real. So we have this like, this isn't working. What am I going to do now? I have a non-compete, or I just don't want to practice anymore, but there's nothing else, on and on. We can't see our way out. And nothing feels true to ourselves, or what is true to us feels like it doesn't matter, because it just needs to be not this, right? Anything that's not this is going to be better. Unfortunately, not true. And often, if we don't take the time to learn from the experience before, we're doomed to repeat the patterns in the next experience, because that's unfortunately how life works. So my suggestion would be to try to find a way to create some space so that you can listen to yourself. And I'm not a good listener to myself, like that quiet voice that tells me what's true and right. I have a tenuous relationship with that potentially existing thing. But I know I don't hear it when I'm panicked. So trying to just slow down so that you can connect with those things and it's okay if they've changed and pivoted. Like I am a very different human today than I was when I left that job. But like the good advice of like, what's the next right step? Almost always the next right step is get some space and like turn inward, right? Because you're also going to get a lot of blasting advice from folks or friends. And I would encourage you to like listen to yourself first, kind of like naming your children. Like maybe you don't want opinions on what other people think of the name you like for your kid, if it's like going to be true and right for you. So space is my advice.
That's really good advice. And I think there's to add to that, I think there's ways to even if you feel like you can't go away or can't take vacation, maybe there are ways to make space to try to do that. Even if that is, taking a day where your kids are still at daycare and having some time to yourself for the day, or maybe it's even if it's just an hour where you really are unwinding, that it is helpful to kind of think about that. Or driving in the car can be really helpful, or there are lots of ways to kind of make little bits of space, like having a cup of tea. Yeah. There are lots of ways to make little space. If even if you can't do the big, and particularly if you're really under crushing overwhelm, it can be really hard to take time away especially if you have lots of responsibilities. But I think that is really important. That is really important advice, isn't it? Just to listen to yourself. I think oftentimes too, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but so many times potentially because of our training and sometimes because of our upbringing, we're told to quiet down that voice and just like push through and just be like, oh, come on, you can do it. Like, you can get through this last semester of vet school. You can get through this internship. You can get through this degree. You can do all of these things. Or you can, come on, you can do it, and push yourself through. And then it silences that voice, and it reminds us that then it's harder for us to listen to it later and remember, oh yeah, I was actually telling me the right thing. We do have really good intuition, and it's not even intuition, it's just actually a culmination of our life's data, what we know. So it really is about waking up that internal voice and remembering to listen to it too. This is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Said by someone wise. Yeah, very good. Yeah. So any other, as I guess, hearing that, do you have any other advice that you might want to share about concrete steps that you could take if you're just feeling a bit over it at the moment?
While I am generally an advocate of the pause, I will say that I think it's really important to consider, and I think Melanie sort of got at this when she was sharing a bit of her story, but consider the things that you like from a broader perspective. So like, one reason that I found my internship hard is because I was the only intern, and I really like collaboration and I really like relationships. And I was like, but I was the only one of me. And everywhere that I had gone to see practice and do externships, there had been more than one intern. So I just hadn't understood that was going to be something that was going to be really important for me. So I think that it's important to consider, like when I did decide to go into small, I was like, you know what? There are going to be parts of it that I do like. I like working with the team, and I knew that I was going to be able to have that in companion animal practice. Even though that wasn't something I was used to having in equine. So I think that it's really important when you're trying to think of what's the right next thing, or how am I going to sort of diversify out into other things? It's important to think about, okay, what parts of veterinary medicine do I enjoy? Like, what parts of my life, because those are good hints, right? To help you understand where you are going to fit next.
Let me read one of the questions we got, because keep them coming, because these are great questions. So concrete steps, where to look and who to turn to. So where should you look if you're looking for a change, and who should you turn to?
I definitely think that, so where to look is I think, we can look at job boards and we can look at opportunities and we can do all of those things. I really, really have come to understand the power of really that, like, self with a capital S. And Colleen, you've touched on it. Melanie, you touched on it. Not only do we just kind of quiet that voice and push through, we also quiet a lot of the emotions that come with the things that we love to do. And so that who to listen to or who to go to, really, I truly believe that our self has a lot of the answers that we need, that we think lie in the outside world somewhere with someone else or with someone else's experience. So, and that's a lot of, I realize that sounds simple and it's not easy. And that's a lot of inner work and reflection to get at. But I'm here to tell you that that really has been the big aha for me as I wrap all of this coaching work together and veterinary experience together.
I'm going to start where you left off, because I think that it is critical, and Melanie has wonderful strategies, and I know there are some resources she can point folks to that like are good. Here's how you can begin. But I think that it's really important, and I just want to emphasize the order, to like do your own work first, then go talk to people. So like have an idea of what you want, so that when you go have conversations, and I would say that there are a number of spaces meant to help you diversify, or for instance, talking to your local reps, talk like from drug companies, from pharma, like you call your USDA, your local, I think many folks are in the US, like call those folks, those industry folks, and just start having conversations about their path, about their positions, and then sort of say like, you know, I'm realizing that I'm interested in this type of thing. What do you know about where that might exist? Or, you know, what position, because one thing that I certainly know well is that I never understood the depth and breadth of non-clinical positions that existed. But the folks that are not in clinical practice know a lot more about it. So yes, but in order to make the most out of those conversations, because you are going to want to make the most out of those conversations, you're going to want to have understood yourself first, so that you might well know, like, government is not a good choice for you, but spending a year doing like a drug rep thing to advance into a technical vet position there, like, because the other thing is progression, right? You might be like, well, that job doesn't offer me a good enough salary, or this job requires this, but it might be for a short period of time, kind of like an internship. And sure, yes, I am happy to have a discussion about, but then it feels like I'm starting again. And yeah, cool, I get that. Going back to grad school, and I was like, but I'm wrong all of the time. I don't want to be wrong all the time. I was right in practice. I knew what I was doing, right? Those are hard things to swallow, but with a horizon in mind. So I do think it's really important to just prepare, right? Because some opportunities, again, they only come across once, or they are very competitive, or you're only going to get one networking chat with someone, which is almost never true, but some folks. So it's best if you've done your work, so that you bring your full self to those moments.
Yeah, maybe I'll chime in too. So I think I think a lot of people do start with like searching for jobs, right? We all are like, okay, that's it. I've had enough of practice. I'm going on Indeed and I'm going to see what I can find. Let's see what's out there. Or let's go on LinkedIn and see what we can find. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I also don't think there's anything wrong with applying for jobs. Because sometimes it serendipitously does work out, and sometimes you have just the right skill set and all of those pieces, and you might be able to make a really great case for why you should do it. But I will also say that sometimes, or what I do hear from people as well, is that they get frustrated with that because they can't find the job that they're looking for. They get frustrated with searching. They get frustrated with applying for stuff, and it just doesn't work out for them. And it's tiring. It takes a lot of energy to apply for jobs and search for jobs. And we don't always have time for that. So one thing that I would recommend, an exercise that I would recommend if you are searching for jobs right now actively, is to go on and search for jobs and broaden your search to global. And what I would say is do some mindful searching. So have a little list and say, here's what I liked about this job posting, and here's what I didn't like about this job posting. Because initially, a lot of times we don't always know, even, particularly if you're feeling very overwhelmed, we don't always know what we like and what we don't like, because we forgot, or we're so busy just saying, I'm really burned out and I'm tired of doing what I'm doing. I can't even think that far ahead. So it just is a way to mindfully scroll through those jobs and think about different ways that why did you like that job, or why did this job seem completely repulsive? what sounded horrific about this job, and what sounded fabulous about the next one. So you start to get a picture of why you're gravitating towards things. And then you can also make it, you can also reach out to people who you're interested in those jobs and ask for a networking conversation. So those are some good first steps. When you're talking about who to turn to, I think, I did a research study looking at veterinary career paths and looking at who people turned to when they were looking to make a career transition, even if they were looking to go to a different type of practice, or whether they ended up staying in practice. And the vast majority of people said that they talked to friends and family, and that they talked to colleagues as well, and sometimes veterinary professors or something like that. So mentors that they had. And a mentor circle, people who've known you for a really long time, can be really good people to reach out to. But then at the same time, I think it can sometimes be important to take that with a grain of salt. So sometimes we only have as much time in the day as we can. Like maybe they've put you into a box in some way, or maybe they have a vision of who you are, and it may be difficult for them to envision that differently. Like, maybe your parents have always introduced you as, this is Melanie, she's a veterinarian, or this is, so-and-so, and she's a doctor. So it can be, they might be clouding that with their own judgment too. So sometimes it's helpful to have an impartial person to bounce ideas off of, and somebody who can really ask you tough questions that you might not have thought of. So your mentor circle is a great place to get, provided you have a good mentor circle that can give you impartial advice or really act in your best interest. Or you can also reach out to somebody who has who has some of the, has some impartiality, but has helped other people down that road. Yeah.
Answer Matt's question.
Yeah.
Something now you wish you would have known before you changed jobs. Yeah.
How long do you have?
Your stuff, whatever stuff you have in life, will follow you until you deal with it. I'm not very long into my new job, and I've already had a moment of like, okay, so like that's a thing that you're really sensitive and worried about. Like, that's you, not the job. And I've had to own, you brought that with you. That's your fear. You're going to need to manage showing, because it's not the job. It is me, and like insecurity and other baggage that I have brought with me. And I, like, as someone who has done what I consider to be a tremendous amount of personal work, like lots of therapy, lots of therapy. So I'm here to normalize, totally here to normalize needing, like, not just coaching help, but like mental health, manage hard stuff that's happened to you in life help. But being able to delineate, like, how is who I am and the stuff I carry with me going to impact my experience of a job? Because I think that it is a worry that some things then become self-fulfilling prophecies, right? And all of the hope and the good intention and the promise that is a dream job that then ends up not being, because of bad habits or damage that was done. And I think a lot of folks that are looking to switch have hard things that have happened. We all have hard things that have happened in life, and they impact us as we go forward differently. Leann mentioned trauma, and I certainly have my own experience of that. But I think it's really important to, again, start to understand that, so you can understand how it impacts all the parts of your life, so you can manage it. So hopefully we minimize or actively manage the impact that it will have in a new place. Because if not, then all the wonderful new places in the world likely aren't gonna help. And I really want to say that, like, with love and hope, like, not like, sometimes you need to leave, right? Because the old habits and the bad habits and the stuff, you can't shake them. They've been established. Those are the patterns. And so yes, a new place, like, go find the new place but also be aware that new places don't automatically, like we all know, right? Oh, it's going to be a new practice in their team, right? But sometimes, and every different facet has it's a relationship and an interaction, right? I'm not trying to say that it's your fault. No, I'm not gaslighting. I'm not trying to blame you. I'm trying to offer a little perspective on, right? We have responsibility to ourselves, right? To take care of ourselves and to manage ourselves effectively so that we can sort of go forward and have the career that we're hoping for, that we dreamed of as we little wannabe vet students.
Yes. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I think somebody told me that story, or somebody told me that truth in a different way, which was to say that they had gone to a marriage counselor, and the marriage counselor had said to them, because they were, I think, headed for divorce, and they said, you know what, the marriage counselor said, you know what, if you think that you're going to leave and find somebody fabulous that isn't, and it's going to be completely different, it's not going to. All of that stuff is going to follow you. It's still going to be there. And so it behooves you to do the work regardless of how this outcome happens. So I think those are important. Those are important things to remember. It does, and as Colleen said, it doesn't mean that it's your fault. It doesn't mean that you're not leaving a crummy situation if you're leaving, and it doesn't mean that there weren't things that were unfair or difficult. But it does mean that sometimes there are things that are that are traits or things that we've cultivated in ourselves that, it will follow us and it will still be there next time.
For damage or harm, I really want to own like stuff that was inflicted upon us through absolutely no fault of our own. Like there's a great, again, wise person saying like, it's not my fault, it's my responsibility, which is, I think, again, hey, I got that, right? Like, yeah, I wasn't, like, damage was inflicted upon me, right? From a toxic practice, a bad boss, like whatever it may have been. But me being in charge of me, I need to figure out how to heal and go forward. So that's my really gentle, like, it's excruciating. And I know that invitation is, if that's where you are, then finding some support to help you heal as you go forward, I think will change your trajectory entirely. And that will also really help as you navigate, because you won't be in that desperate place, right? It's getting a little life preserver in the deep end while you're finding your way.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Leann, what do you wish you had known if you had, before you had changed your position?
Definitely one of that thing for me is that two opposite things can be true at the same time. So I definitely fell into the either or mindset. And if I do this, I can't do that. And if I am like this, I can't be like that. And all of that, very much thinking like that. And
I can be a great veterinarian, but it's not working out for me right now in this place.
Exactly. And if I leave the alternative in my old head would have been, if I leave this place, I can't be a great veterinarian. Or I can't have a client unhappy with me and be a great veterinarian. So reframing those things into, I can be a great veterinarian and have an unhappy client or a bad social media review. And those two things can be true at the same time. And that to me was quite possibly the biggest life-changing realization and reflection that has really been helpful for me.
Yeah. If I can share one, I think, so somebody had made a comment in our comments here, which I think is probably also, Leann, I think identity definitely plays a role in making these changes. And so that would be my piece of advice, as well as that, or my thing that I wish I had known, is that being a veterinarian doesn't define who I am. It's part of who I am. And I worked really hard to be a veterinarian, but it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's true about me. Nor is it the only thing that's great and wonderful about any of us. Like, there's so many parts and facets to us that, and so many pieces of life to enjoy, that it's really limiting to believe that being a veterinarian is like the only thing that we're really awesome at, or the only part that's our only piece of identity. So that would be my big piece. I think the other piece that I've found as I've made transitions is that maybe what got you here won't get you there. So the idea that sometimes it requires a different way of doing things in order to progress to your next level, or to adopt new skill sets. And that, it's also not a lesson that I have, that the universe continues to show me and I continue to try to learn, is that it's okay to accept help, and that it's important to ask for help too. And that sometimes is one of the greatest gifts, where you learn, new skills on how to get to the next level, or how to get to the next place. Because if we believe that we can always do it alone, then we're going to crash and burn. There's just 0% chance we can get through this life on our own. We're not built that way, and it's not, well, I mean, I suppose you could, but it's pretty hard going. Okay, so there were a couple of questions. There was a question about, has anyone ever used career coaching or any type of coaching? Now I'm going to let you know that we do have, we're going to talk, I'm just going to mention it at the end. This is absolutely not a sales pitch. We do offer coaching through the DVM project. And I will mention it at the end, but what I think might be important to discuss in this question is more around, when do you choose a coach, and why would you choose a coach? And I think Colleen and Leann bring both different perspectives on this, and I would love to hear from you. When do you choose a coach versus another type of professional, versus just reaching out to your mentors or those kind of things?
First of all, I think that there are lots of different kind of coaches. So, and in the veterinary space, what we're very much used to is performance coaching, like coaching to teach a skill or communication or something like that. And the concept of more life coaching is relatively new. So I feel like there are many different places where choosing a coach to learn a new skill, or to manage change, or at times of when you're interested in achieving new goals or personal growth, those are the places where a coach, I think, is positioned very well. And sometimes it is, I'm stuck and I need help exploring and creating that self-awareness as well. So I think that maybe the answer to that question is, versus other professionals, meaning mentors or those kind of people, is when it's when the experience, the necessary experience isn't maybe relevant to what your needs are at the time. I really don't think I was very eloquent in that explanation, but I will leave it at that, and probably could maybe add a little bit as Colleen explains her point of view too.
Maybe just, there's another question that might be useful to kind of roll in. So is career coaching like counseling or therapy with a different title? I think that's a really important clarification to make, because there are distinct differences. And Colleen, I'm going to just tee you up, because I know you can answer this one.
So the answer is no, they are not the same, and they have very different purposes. And while there are therapists that sometimes in their counseling space do some coaching along the way, coaches are definitively not mental health practitioners unless they have additional training as well. And so that's a really important thing to understand. I think that one thing that I've gotten much better at over time is, and I think Mel mentioned it, but like, it's okay to say, like, I don't know how to do this next thing, like some help would be great. I think that it's really important to think about when people walk through our doors and we have that, okay, so I have a little patient, had a little patient who'd been having chronic diarrhea for a month and had been doing a funny licking thing since its dental last February. I saw it like a month ago. I was like, why am I just hearing about the funny licking thing that's been happening now for like over 6 months and like diarrhea for a month, and now we're worried. Little dog was actually quite unwell, is trending up, so terrific. But that moment of, I wish we'd talked about this sooner. I think that it's really valuable to consider that coaching is almost always helpful. It's like a sort of an up level thing, or hey, I understand myself better, I understand my reactions better. For me, the line between sort of coaching and counseling or mental health stuff is any indication of like mental illness, which is not a term I love, but mental health concerns like depression, anxiety, trauma, particularly trauma needs therapy, generally speaking. So, you know, in my past life and some of my present life, when I have coaching conversations, if I get the impression that there's deeper stuff, then I usually say, hey, I think we should loop in, or I would encourage you to explore with your GP, someone else in your life, whether mental health counseling would be valuable. For me, coaching is very much sort of in the here and now and about understanding better. But when there's stuff that lives underneath that, then for me, that's mental health counseling or therapy. And so I really, in terms of sort of the when and the whys of coaching, I think that almost always, if you have the inclination, you're like, well, I think that might be helpful. Yeah, it really probably would be. Many things are a resource question. And when I was an intern, I lived out near lower mainland BC, so near Whistler, big ski resort. And so I went skiing with some family friends. And lo and behold, as an intern who just finished grad school, I didn't have a helmet. And family friend was like, seriously? Like, how much did you just invest in your brain? I was like, oh, that's a good point. And I went and bought like the $120 helmet. And so I would encourage you to also consider like your ability to do your job and your stability and your knowledge of yourself is contingent on your performance in any space. And so like, yeah, for me as an intern, $120 was quite a lot at the time. But also, yeah, like, of course I needed a helmet. Of course I did. And I don't think coaching becomes an of course, but in times of transition, in times of struggle, in times when we're considering like shifting or turning away from a dream that we're really not sure if that's like, then help helps. And so it is worth having an exploratory conversation, you know, because I'm of the circle where when I told my family I was going back to grad school, I was told I was long on the runway, which means like I wasn't like launching off into grown-up life. But look at me now, right? So, you know, not everyone in your life is supportive or again, is willing to see you in a different way. They'll hang on to your old dreams thinking they're supporting you. So working with someone who is going to take the time to get to know you, is going to help you get to know yourself, can be the support you need during a really difficult transition time.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Leann, did you have something to add to that?
I just was going to add one thing, because I think that's the important piece too. Is a coach is an unbiased perspective that you know, won't bring a lot of other past lenses to a situation or to you, and so can help create that safe space to be truly accountable and reflect on actions, behaviors, presence, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that in the veterinary space, this is my own personal theory, in the veterinary space, when in a coaching conversation, we do actually talk about emotions, which are warm and fuzzy, which automatically kind of take us to therapy. And that is it, like the emotion piece, we talk about them, yes, and we ratify them. And if we can be forward facing and goal focused and effective at moving forward, that's where coaching is really relevant. And sometimes it's important to realize that maybe we start with a coach, and then the coach and the person recognize that, you know, as much as I want to try and I want to be forward focused, maybe this is more of a therapy conversation, and switching gears and pivoting there too. So making the right choice, to get help when you're struggling is important, and working with someone trusted that can give you that, give you that really clear lens upon which to say, you know what, I really don't think that coaching is serving you right now, and helping make those connections, and be that bridge to other resources as well. I think that's important too, because as a coach, we hold our coachees creative, resourceful, and whole. And sometimes we don't know we're not that until we start conversations.
There have been a couple of DMs kind of talking about, would this be right for me? And I, what is the right next step? So I guess the other thing that I can maybe share is from a different perspective is my experience being coached. So I engaged a coach a couple of years ago, and I will tell you that the experience, because I have to say I was quite skeptical about having a coach, and I wasn't too sure what it would be like, because I thought, in my typical fashion, I could just figure these things out. I mean, what could they possibly be giving me that I wouldn't be able to, like, it's just questions, like, how could I not just figure that out? And of course I was proven wrong, but it was really it was such an interesting and enlightening experience, in that, yes, there were a lot of questions that were asked of me, but I kind of at the right time, or like, why does that matter to you? Or tell me more about what that means to you, or why would that be such a bad thing? Or just helping to explore some of those pieces about limiting beliefs, or where I might need to go next. They were also this coach was able to also hook me up with some, doing some emotional intelligence profiling, asking questions and exploring a problem together, or a situation that might have really been challenging in the workplace, or just professionally, and then following up with resources and exploring that in a non-judgmental way, in a way that was relatively safe, in a way that I didn't have to worry that I was downloading something to a colleague or a coworker. We obviously in a workplace, we try not to triangulate and share our, dump our problems on others, and sometimes it's not appropriate if you're the boss. Or if you're in charge of a program, or you may feel that, or there may not be, or in charge of a staff or something like that, it can be sometimes a bit lonely, or you may not know what the next step is. So having that person personally was really interesting. I will say that one of the things that I had to be willing to do was put in the work to be willing to be open to being questioned, and to respond honestly. I think that I had to also, when she gave me homework, it was important to do those things. And even though it was uncomfortable, to document, like, I think one of the exercises was, if I got into a situation where I felt really emotional or really upset about something, was to write it down. Like, why do you feel that way? What's the reason why? To explain the situation, and almost collecting data. And that's uncomfortable, and it takes time, and it's annoying to do, but it was a really important and really clever exercise to get me to think about why I was thinking certain ways, or thinking about certain things. So for me, it was really a question. So really what I found out of that coaching experience was that what got me to where I was then, I couldn't have got past the point that I was at without some help. And so I suppose I probably could have combed through the literature, and I could have done all this personal research, and I could have just banged my head against a wall for another year or two. But instead I was very lucky to have this person come into my life, and I was able to, I guess, move into the next phase of where I wanted to be. So it was an interesting thing to also be shown the value of, and trusting, trying something new, and saying, I suppose also seeing the value in short-circuiting something where, yeah, maybe you could have got it done by yourself, like, and maybe I could build something on my own too, but like, how long would that take, and how much, I think about that when you think about that in your home, like, is it worth it to DIY something, or is it worth it to short circuit something and to try and get it done a little faster, or to get it done a little bit easier? So so those are some things that I thought of as a real skeptic of the coaching process. I will tell you that I really converted myself through the process, despite my best efforts to remain cynical. So yeah, I think those are really important things. And the other thing that I will also share is that I have colleagues who I didn't know that they were engaging in coaching, or didn't know what they were doing, and I remember sitting with a colleague and saying like, wow, like so-and-so has really changed a lot. Like, I just really noticed they're just so much more empathetic. They're so much more able to respond to things. And I finally, I kind of commented to them, and they said, well, yeah, like I engaged a coach. I was like, oh, how interesting. That's really fascinating to see. And so it was things that they, they obviously didn't tell me, but it was such a visible and noticeable difference in them. Like, it was a complete turnaround. And I don't know if that transformation was necessarily evident to people around me, but it certainly felt really different after I had completed that process for those, for those goals that I had, which is really, it's just an interesting scenario. And that's not to say that you'll have to decide if coaching is right for you, and you'll have to decide if that is the right fit for you. But just to share one experience that I had. So
it's okay to not DIY things. You take a lot of pride. Veterinarians is like, I can do anything.
You can, but should you?
Why I sighed is because Melanie and I have talked about like the toddler moment, and I have a toddler, and his like, I need to do this. And you're like, yes, you do. And now we will be late for school. Like, and I will have, like, my fuse will be significantly shorter during the day because I've used all of it right now watching you zip up your coat.
But darn it, those mittens will be on by themselves.
Yeah. So, you're still going to learn how to do up your coat, even if you get a coach. It just might not be like you. It's like maybe tying your shoes is a better example. Like, you're just going to know the rhyme, the bunny rhyme. You're still going to have to practice and remember the bunny rhyme. But I never learned the bunny rhyme, just to be clear. If that failed, I'm sorry. I did not learn the bunny rhyme to do the shoes. I heard it was excellent. Around a tree, down a hole.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh dear. I also laughing.
Gets it. I don't know.
I'm also laughing because I have a toddler, and this is like our daily struggle, that I do it myself struggle. So it's like a daily is 3, and that's just where we're at right now. Donna DeBonis has also shared that they are doing through the AC VPM. They're having a career series, which is great. And another resource, if you're looking for organizations to look into, is the American Association of Industry Vets. They often have career series as well. And then the DVM Project, we've got some blogs and stuff. So if you're looking to explore things, there's some great resources out there. So
I'm just going to remind all of you that I think it's easy to look at folks who've made a change or a non-clinical practice and sort of say, like, they have stuff I don't have. No, you're unique and awesome. And if where you are isn't where you want to be, I have complete and total faith that you will be able to navigate to a place that you would be happier being. And it may be hard, and you may choose to not take that path right now, or you may choose to make where you are better right now instead. And that's awesome. But I have confidence that if you don't like where you are, you can navigate to a better place. And you can laugh at me and say, like, you don't know me. No, but I'm confident just the same. You can do it. You can, and you will.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Colleen and Leann are part of our coaching team at the DVM Project, as well as myself. So we do offer a free discovery call to see if coaching might be right for you and if we might be a good fit for you. And there are packages that we offer that are competitively priced for the market. And really, I guess we just wanted to make sure that you knew that resource was available. And otherwise, we just really I know that from my perspective, I just wanted to get together with everybody and offer an opportunity to kick back and enjoy an evening to talk about cool things that are available in vet med.